For better or for worse, one single trade involving a quarterback can change an NFL franchise forever.
Basically, what this trade says is they have to win a Super Bowl. They got to win a Super Bowl, what, in the next 2 years? Or it's a disaster.
Based on the impact and how much they changed the game forever, here's a look at the 10 biggest quarterback trades in NFL history. Falcons send Brett Favre to the Packers. There simply hasn't been a bigger trade involving a quarterback that completely changed the NFL landscape than this one. 1 year after the Atlanta Falcons selected Brett Favre 33rd overall in 1992, he was traded to the Green Bay Packers for a first-round pick, 17th overall in that year's draft. The Falcons traded down 2 spots and took Southern Miss running back Tony Smith, who finished with 329 career rushing yards. Yippee. Favre, on the other hand, single-handedly turned the Packers around following 2 decades of misery. He won 3 straight MVP awards from 1995 to 97 and helped the Cheeseheads to Super Bowl 31 and 32 appearances, winning the former to capture his lone championship ring. Favre took Green Bay to the playoffs in 11 of his 16 seasons there, including 4 NFC title game appearances. He retired as the all-time passing yards and passing touchdowns leader, though Tom Brady is now the proud holder of those records. And when Favre left the Packers in 2008, the team was in good hands with another future Hall of Famer, MVP winner and Super Bowl champion in Aaron Rodgers. Buccaneers and 49ers, a young successor to Joe Montana. With the number 1 pick in the 1984 NFL supplemental draft for USFL and CFL players, the Tampa Bay Buccaneers took Los Angeles Express signal caller Steve Young. Undone by a horrid supporting cast in Tampa, Young lost 16-19 starts over 2 years there and had just 11 touchdown passes against 21 interceptions. The Bucs held the first overall pick in 1987 and used it on Miami QB Vinny Testaverde. San Francisco 49ers head coach Bill Walsh saw something special in Young and acquired him from the Bucs for the low price of a 2nd and 4th round pick. Suffice to say, the Bucs really, shall we say, bucked up here. Young backed up Joe Montana for 2 of the 49ers' 4 Super Bowl wins in the 80s decade, but an elbow injury forced Montana to miss all of 1991 and the vast majority of the 1992 season, so the 49ers had no choice but to turn to Young. During Montana's absence, backup Steve Young rose to the occasion and emerged as the new franchise face. As Montana's successor in San Fran, Young won 2 MVP awards, earned 7 Pro Bowl nods, and led San Fran to a Super Bowl 29 championship in the 1994 season. He led the NFL in passing TDs 4 times and in completion percentage 5 times. As if the 49ers didn't already have it good enough with all those years of Montana. 49ers choose Young over Montana. Joe Montana was the backbone of the San Francisco 49ers dynasty, leading them to 4 Super Bowls in the 1980s. Following Young's career year in 92, San Fran had a tough call to make. They ultimately chose Young over the then GOAT, packaging Montana safety David Whitmore and a 3rd round pick to the Kansas City Chiefs in exchange for the number 18 pick. The trade turned out to be a win-win for everyone involved. Young kept the 49ers dynasty going and led them to another Super Bowl championship in 1994, while Montana turned the Chiefs back into a title contender. Montana's arrival also helped the Chiefs land future Hall of Famer and running back Marcus Allen. That duo led KC to playoff appearances in 93 and 94, including the AFC Championship game in the former. Montana would finally retire after 2 stellar seasons in KC. Giants acquire washed-up YA Tittle from 49ers. Tittle played 10 seasons for the 49ers from 1951 to 1960. During his tenure with the organization, Tittle earned 4 Pro Bowl nods and led the NFL in passing touchdowns during the 1955 campaign. But the 49ers viewed Tittle as washed up after his age 34 season in 1960, and so he was traded to the QB-needy New York Giants for guard Lou Cordileone. Not only was Tittle not washed up, but he was also the NFL's best QB during his short but sweet 4-year stint with the Giants. Tittle won 1963 NFL MVP honors and led the league in passing TDs during the 1962 and 63 seasons. A 3-time Pro Bowler with the Giants, Tittle also led the club to 3 straight NFL championship game appearances from 1961 to 63, though they were all losses. On top of all these accomplishments, Tittle led the NFL in completion percentage, passing touchdowns, and passer rating in 1963. At the time, it was one of the absolute greatest individual seasons for a quarterback. It is no coincidence that after Tittle's retirement in 1965, the Giants slumped into a long period of despair, failing to reach the postseason again until 1981. Lions sent Bobby into Pittsburgh's Lane. Bobby Lane was among the NFL's premier quarterbacks during his tenure with the Detroit Lions. A 4-time Pro Bowler and 2-time passing yards leader during his tenure in the Motor City, Lane led the Lions to NFL championships in 1952, 1953, and 1957. In 1958, the Lions traded Lane in a blockbuster blockbuster move that brought fellow signal caller Earl Morrall to Detroit. Legend has it that after the trade, Lane stated the Lions wouldn't win over the next 50 years. Yes, indeed, the Lions have been arguably the NFL's saddest team since that trade. Not only have they failed to win a championship since the Lane blockbuster, but the organization has yet to appear in a Super Bowl. Lane spent his final 5 years with the Steelers, continuing his strong play by earning 2 more Pro Bowl nods. You can only wonder how much different history would have been for the Lions if they had never traded him. Sonny Jurgensen days come to Washington. Sonny Jurgensen enjoyed a storied 7-year tenure with the Philadelphia Eagles from 1957 to 63, leading them to an NFL championship in the 1960 campaign. But following an injury-riddled 1963 campaign, the Eagles traded Jurgensen to Washington in exchange for fellow signal caller Norm Snead and defensive back Claude Crabb. Though Snead would go on to put up good numbers in Philly, the Eagles were among football's worst teams in the decade following the blockbuster trade. Jurgensen, on the other hand, breathed new life into the Washington franchise. Though injuries continued to hit him in the final years of his career, Jurgensen helped Washington to 4 straight playoff appearances from 1971 to 74. Unfortunately, Jurgensen was injured and unable to play in Washington's run to Super Bowl VII, where they fell to the undefeated Miami Dolphins. Nonetheless, the Hall of Famer earned 3 Pro Bowl nods in DC and led the NFL in passing yards on 3 occasions. In other words, this trade worked out just fine for the Commanders. Norm Van Brocklin flies to the Eagles. After 9 storied seasons with the Los Angeles Rams, highlighted by an NFL championship in 1951, Van Brocklin announced his retirement in 1958. But he quickly got the itch to continue playing and was thus traded to the Philadelphia Eagles for Buck Lansford, Jimmy Harris, and a first-round pick. Indeed, Van Brocklin had plenty of football left in him. He spent 3 seasons in Philly, winning MVP and first-team All-Pro honors in his swan song 1960 season, while also leading the Eagles to an NFL championship banner. Following his Hall of Fame playing career, Van Brocklin went into coaching. He served as the head coach for the Minnesota Vikings and later the Atlanta Falcons. Joe Theismann swims from South Beach to DC. To say that Theismann was a highly coveted young athlete would be an understatement. The Miami Dolphins drafted him 99th overall in the 1971 NFL Draft. The Minnesota Twins of Major League Baseball also used a draft pick on Theismann, hoping that he'd be swayed to hit the diamond instead of the gridiron. Theismann ultimately chose football, but couldn't reach a deal with Miami, so he went up north to play for the Toronto Argonauts of the Canadian Football League. The 2-time CFL All-Star then eyed the jump back to the NFL, and in 1974, Miami dealt him away to Washington for a 1976 first-round pick. The pick was used on Arizona State linebacker Larry Gordon. As for Washington, their search for a capable successor to Sonny Jurgensen was finally over. Theismann became Washington's starting QB in 1978. 4 years later, he led the organization to its first ever Super Bowl championship, fittingly against his old team in the Dolphins. Theismann won 1983 League MVP and Offensive Player of the Year honors and led them back to the Super Bowl, though they were blown out by the Los Angeles Raiders. Theismann was on a Hall of Fame trajectory before his career ended abruptly in a 1985 game against the New York Giants. Theismann suffered a gruesome leg fracture after taking a sack, and he would never play another NFL snap after that. But Theismann's career in Washington was nothing short of a success. He set the golden standard in DC, and the organization went on to win 2 more Super Bowls under legendary head coach Joe Gibbs. G-Men ship Fran Tarkenton back to Vikings. Tarkenton spent his first 6 NFL seasons with the Vikings, which spanned from 1961 to 66. But in a bit of a surprise, Minnesota dealt the 2-time Pro Bowler to the QB-needy New York Giants in 1967. Tarkenton earned Pro Bowl nods in each of his first 4 seasons with Big Blue. Realizing their mistake, the Vikings reacquired Tarkenton in a 1972 blockbuster deal that sent the aforementioned Norm Snead to New York. Tarkenton picked up where he left off in Minnesota, leading the team to 3 Super Bowl appearances, though they were all losses. Tarkenton also won MVP and Offensive Player of the Year honors in 1975, and he finished as the league's passing yards leader in his final season in 1978. The 9-time Pro Bowler put Minnesota on the football map not once, but twice, and now he's enshrined in Canton. The Jared Goff, Matthew Stafford blockbuster. We conclude this list with the most recent of the 10. Goff's relationship with the Los Angeles Rams head coach Sean McVay began to deteriorate in the 2020 season. Over in Detroit, Matthew Stafford was stuck on a horrible Lions team that was sinking more and more each year. Stafford and the Lions agreed to break up, and Los Angeles capitalized on the opportunity in 2021. The Rams acquired the strong-armed QB from Detroit in exchange for Goff, 2022 and 2023 first-rounders, plus a 2021 third-round selection. For Detroit, the trade marked the long-overdue change for a tear-it-all-down rebuild. But the Rams were at least the immediate winners of this trade. Stafford proved to be a giant upgrade in La La Land over Goff, tossing 4,886 yards and 41 touchdowns that tied his career best 10 years earlier. But Stafford's magic only continued into the postseason, as he orchestrated game-winning drives in the divisional round, NFC Championship game, and, most importantly, Super Bowl 56. Leading the Rams to a thrilling late win over Joe Burrow and the Cincinnati Bengals in their home venue of SoFi Stadium, no less. The Stafford trade netted the Rams their second Super Bowl in history. Goff, meanwhile, provided stellar enough play for Detroit as they capitalized on their additional draft capital and found new cornerstone players that gave the franchise new hope. A rebuild was necessary, and sending Stafford to the Rams proved to be a win-win for all parties here. But what do you think is the biggest quarterback trade in NFL history? Let us know in the comment section below. If you like this video and learned a thing or two, clicking the like button helps out a ton. And hey, we appreciate it. If this is your first time coming around to TPS though, subscribing is a great idea because we put out videos like this every single day. But as always, thanks for watching and we'll see you guys next time.